Welcome to my channel HFY Tales *. He shielded an alien child from gunfire. Her mother's army came for Himbro *. Gunfire tore through the bustling space market, shredding metal and sending civilians scattering in panic. A small alien child froze, trembling as deadly blaster bolts rained around her. Without thinking, he leaped across the open ground, taking the fire himself to shield her fragile body. Pain exploded through his shoulder, but he didn't care. Her life was worth every second, every risk. As they dove into a shadowed alley, the chaos faded, and only their breaths filled the silence. He had no idea who she was or why anyone would hunt her, but he knew one thing: he would not let her die. Gunfire erupted across the crowded market like thunder breaking in a fragile glass world. Blaster bolts cut through the air, igniting sparks from stalls and sending shards of metal, fruit, and glass skittering across the floor. Civilians screamed, ducked, and scrambled for cover. Among them, a small alien child froze, her glowing violet eyes wide with terror. Her delicate frame barely reached above the crates, and her tiny hands clutched a data crystal that pulsed faintly in rhythm with her panicked heartbeat. Every shot that whizzed past her threatened to end her life, and for a moment, it seemed there was no hope at all. He saw her immediately, crouched and trembling in the open. There was no time to hesitate. With a roar of instinct, the human captain threw himself across the open ground, his shoulder taking the full impact of a blaster bolt that would have shredded her chest. Pain exploded across him, searing fire through his nerves, but he didn't care. He pushed forward, slamming into the child and pulling her down behind a low wall of debris. The world was chaos around them, a cacophony of screams, energy bolts, and the stench of scorched metal. She gasped, blinking through tears and fear. As he pressed his body against hers, his jacket scorched and smoking from the glancing shots. "It's okay," he hissed through gritted teeth. "You're safer now." The words sounded almost hollow even as they left his mouth, but he meant them. Somehow, miraculously, they meant them. Her small hands pressed against his chest, trembling, and he could feel the strange energy radiating from the crystal she clutched. He didn't know what it was, but he knew instinctively that it made her valuable and dangerous to anyone who wanted control. The attackers moved with precision, not the random chaos of common criminals, but the trained coordination of assassins. Their armor glinted faintly under the market lights, their faces obscured by sleek visors. They weren't there for a robbery, they were there for the child. Every step she took, every movement he made, was watched and calculated. Their boots clicked against the tile, and he could hear the soft whir of energy weapons charging in their grips. "Stay close to me," he whispered urgently, pressing her further down behind the debris. He peered over the edge. One assassin moved too close, a glint of their weapon catching the light. Without a second thought, he threw a small flashbang from his belt. It exploded in a bright burst, momentarily blinding the enemy and giving them a few precious seconds. The child looked at him, eyes wide, struggling to comprehend the danger, the panic, the heroism of a human willing to risk everything for her. Why are you helping me?" she stammered. He shook his head, grimacing as pain lanced through his shoulder. "Because no one should die like this, not today, not like this." He hoisted her slightly, letting her cling to his back as he darted toward the narrow alley that promised some cover. Bolts of plasma sizzled past them, scorching the walls and igniting crates into sudden flames. Sparks flew as one shot ricocheted off a metal crate, coming uncomfortably close. He gritted his teeth and pushed harder, leaning into the pain that shot through his arm with every step. The child's tiny hands tightened on his shoulders. They want me," she whispered. "They do," he admitted, voice low. "But I won't let them take you." As they slipped into the alley, the sounds of pursuit were close behind. The assassins didn't relent, they couldn't. They had orders. The human's strategy, his instincts honed by years of freighter runs and dangerous jobs, allowed him to navigate a maze of narrow pathways, side streets, and abandoned corridors. Each turn brought the threat closer, and each turn brought the human and the alien child into a precarious safety only temporary at best. At one point, he ducked behind a pile of shipping crates panting, shoulder bleeding. "We need to move faster," he said, eyes scanning every shadow. "If they corner us, we won't last a second." The child's glowing eyes searched his, wide and frightened. I can't fly," she admitted, her voice barely audible. "Not with my wings, they hurt." He frowned, realizing the extent of her vulnerability. Even her small, fragile frame had the latent signs of power. Her wings weren't just for show, they were delicate, broken instruments of something greater. "Then you stick to me," he said. "I'll get us out of here." They slipped into an abandoned workshop, the narrow doorway just barely allowing both to fit. The human slammed it shut behind them, activating a locking mechanism just as a plasma bolt streaked past the entrance. Sparks cascaded from the doorframe. He swore under his breath. "That was close," he muttered. The child's hands clutched. The data crystal and its faint pulse seemed to synchronize with her heartbeat. What is this?" she asked, curiosity and fear mingling in her tone. "I don't know," he admitted. "But someone wanted it badly enough to kill for it, and they'll keep trying." Outside, the assassins regrouped, their coordinated movements suggesting a chain of command, strategy and persistence that made him uneasy. This wasn't a simple hit, it was a hunt, and they were very good hunters. He helped the child onto a raised platform, shielding her as she tried to get a better view of the surroundings. "Listen to me," he said, voice low but commanding. "We can't stay here. They'll find us if we don't move. You trust me?" The child nodded, trembling but willing. "Yes," she whispered. He smiled faintly, even as pain radiated from his shoulder. "Good, that's all I need for now." He opened a hidden panel in the floor of the workshop, revealing a cramped maintenance tunnel. "This is our way out," he said. "It's narrow, dangerous, but it's the only chance we've got." The child looked down at the darkness below, hesitation in her eyes. "And if they follow, they won't get us," he said firmly, though inside he wasn't certain. Humans were stubborn. Yes, but even he could die. "But we have to move now." He lowered himself first, then helped the child down. As they disappeared into the tunnel, the shadows of the assassins loomed at the workshop entrance, scanning, calculating. For the first time since the attack began, the human allowed himself a brief thought. He had no idea who this child was, what power she held, or why anyone would kill for her. All he knew was that he had to protect her, or die trying. And somewhere, above the city, unseen, a fleet began to stir, a sign that the danger was far from over. The true hunt was only beginning. Days passed in the cramped quarters of the human freighter, and the air inside smelled faintly of scorched metal, oil, and antiseptic. He had patched his own wounds as best he could, but pain still throbbed in his shoulder every time he moved. His medkit was running low, and his arm ached with the lingering heat of the blaster burn. Yet he could not rest. The child Lysera, as she had finally whispered her name, hovered near the small console, her glowing eyes wide and restless. She rarely spoke, only observing, clutching the faintly pulsing data crystal to her chest. He had learned one thing quickly. She was more than a frightened child. There was a weight to her presence, something almost tangible in the way the crystal responded to her emotions. His fingers brushed against it once, briefly, and he had felt an almost imperceptible vibration, like it had acknowledged him. He shivered, unsure if it was some advanced alien technology or something far stranger. Either way, it marked her as dangerous and valuable. Then the freighter's sensors screamed. The blip on the monitor grew larger by the second. He turned toward the viewport and froze. The sky above the asteroid belt rippled with hundreds of ships, sleek and black, their hulls etched with alien sigils he didn't recognize at first. But one emblem stood out. The Talon Imperium. Her mother's fleet had arrived. Lysera's small hand trembled as she hovered closer to him. "They've come," she whispered. "They're here," he admitted, voice tight with tension. "And they're not leaving until they get you." Her eyes filled with both awe and fear. "My mother," she said softly. "She commands the Imperium." He swallowed. That explained a lot. The assassination attempt in the market, the precision, the relentless hunters, and now, the massive fleet in orbit. These were not mercenaries or pirates. These were the most elite forces in the galaxy. "They know we're here," he muttered, "and they won't hesitate, not for a second, not even to ask." The freighter shuddered as a Talon cruiser moved into firing position, energy cannons flaring briefly before powering down. Lysera stepped back, frightened, as he moved in front of her. "Listen," he said, steadying his voice despite the rising panic. "I don't know exactly why your mother wants you back, or why she thinks she can claim me, but I know one thing: we need a plan." She nodded slowly, uncertainty flickering across her glowing features. "A plan, but I don't know how to fight them. They're my people, my mother's people. They're too strong." "That doesn't matter," he said firmly. "Strong isn't always fast. Strong isn't always clever. Humans survive because we improvise, because we take risks that no one else would. And I've survived plenty. We'll find a way." The fleet above pulsed with silent menace, hundreds of ships poised for attack. He glanced at the sensors again. Multiple boarding pods were deploying toward the asteroid field, each carrying elite Talon warriors. These were not negotiators. These were hunters, trained for lethal precision. "Lysera," he said softly, kneeling to her level. "You have to trust me. Don't move unless I tell you." She looked at him, fear and hope mingling in her eyes. I trust you," she whispered. It was enough. He activated the freighter's stealth systems, praying the antiquated tech would hold against Talon sensors. The ship shuddered as the cloaking field engaged, shimmering faintly across the hull. "Okay," he muttered. "We're hidden for now, but they'll find us eventually. We need to be ready." Hours passed in tense silence. Lysera sat quietly, clutching the crystal, and he reviewed every possibility: escape routes, emergency jumps, improvised defenses. The Talon Imperium's forces were vast, far beyond anything he had faced before. Even a single cruiser could obliterate this freighter. And yet, he could not let her fall back into their hands. Finally, a communication signal pinged on the console, a video feed from the Talon fleet. The holographic image flickered to life, showing a figure, tall, regal, and terrifying. Her armor gleamed with the authority of a commander who had conquered entire systems. Lysera gasped. "Mother," she breathed. The commander's eyes swept over the freighter's image, landing on him. You, she said coldly. Human, you have endangered my child and insulted the Imperium. Under ancient law, you now belong to me as my consort. He stared, dumbfounded. Consort. Do not test me, she said. You saved her life. By law, you are mine. You will serve or you will die. Lysera's hand trembled as she looked at him, fear and desperation clear in her gaze. You can't just take him, she whispered. Her mother's eyes softened, almost imperceptibly. I don't take lightly what must be done, but he belongs to me. He cannot refuse. He gritted his teeth, already calculating every possible response. This was no longer just survival. This was diplomacy, politics, and ancient law, all combined in a storm that could kill him at any second. I don't belong to anyone, he said firmly, and I'm not leaving until she's safe. The commander's expression hardened. Then you leave me no choice. Boarding will commence immediately. You have one chance to comply. As the freighter shuddered again, sensors showing multiple Talon dropships approaching at high velocity, he realized their survival depended on one thing: improvisation. The Talon military was structured, disciplined, and rigid. They had rules, protocols, predictable patterns. He had none of that, but he had unpredictability, cunning, and human audacity. He looked at Lysera, her eyes wide, and whispered, "Ready to run?" She nodded, gripping the crystal tightly. Ready? He triggered the emergency ejection sequence, opening concealed escape pods and plotting a course through the asteroid field. Outside, the Talon ships descended like vultures, scanning every inch of the space around them. The freighter shuddered as a volley of energy bolts streaked past, narrowly missing them. Hold on, he shouted as the first pod detached. They hurtled through the debris-strewn void, weaving and dodging, each maneuver taking advantage of human ingenuity over alien precision. Lysera's crystal glowed brighter, pulsing in rhythm with the proximity alarms. He realized with a start that it was reacting to the threat, helping him navigate, warning him of unseen dangers. The first drop pod slammed into a small asteroid, skidding dangerously across the surface. We're not out yet, he warned. Keep your head down. From the shadows of the fleet, Talon interceptors streaked toward them. Laser fire tore chunks from the asteroid, sending debris spinning into the vacuum. The child gasped, and he pressed himself over her. I've got you, he said. Always. As the pod approached a narrow chasm between two massive asteroids, he saw the Talon boarding pods closing fast behind them. We'll have to go through the canyon, he muttered. Risky, but our only chance. Lysera's eyes widened, but she didn't argue. I trust you, she said quietly. He nodded grimly. Good, that's all I need. The pod dove into the canyon, twisting and spinning as asteroid walls tore past. Blaster bolts zipped around them, ricocheting off rocks and sending sparks flying. He felt a rush of adrenaline unlike anything before. Every maneuver, every calculation, every instinct was in overdrive. Somehow, against impossible odds, they survived the first wave. But outside the pod, he knew the Talon Imperium was vast, relentless, and patient. This escape was only temporary. The real danger, her mother's fleet, her claim, and the shadow of betrayal within the Imperium was only beginning. And as Lysera clung to him, trembling but alive, he realized one undeniable truth. The moment they had survived was not safety. It was only the start of a war he had never expected to fight. The human freighter lurched as it docked within the Talon flagship, a structure so vast it seemed to defy space itself. Light from the outer stars glinted off its obsidian hull, reflecting like 1,000 shards of glass. He stepped cautiously onto the gleaming platform, Lysera's small hand gripping his tightly. Her mother, the Supreme Commander, awaited them at the far end of a corridor lined with polished crystal panels and security. Drones humming silently above. Her presence was commanding, the kind of authority that silenced even the bravest soldiers. When she spoke, the sound carried weight, echoing through the corridor like the decree of an entire empire. You survived, she said, eyes scanning him from head to toe. Human, you have defied death and proven yourself in ways I did not anticipate. He held her gaze steadily, though every nerve in his body was tense. I didn't survive for glory, he said. I survived for her. She's the only reason I'm standing here. Lysera glanced up at him, her glowing eyes wide, almost embarrassed by the human's audacity. He was a stranger, and yet somehow, he had become her protector. That fact alone seemed to challenge the rigid rules of her society. The Supreme Commander's gaze softened, but only slightly. By law, she said, anyone who saves my child, anyone who shields her from harm is bound to me as a consort. You may not refuse. You will take your place beside me, or you will die. He swallowed hard. I don't belong to anyone, he said firmly, and I'm not a part of your empire's games. I only care about keeping her alive. Her expression flickered. Was it anger, surprise, or curiosity? It was hard to tell. She raised a hand, and the doors at the end of the corridor slid open to reveal a council chamber filled with Talon officers, each standing rigidly in their places. Whispers rippled through the assembly like a sudden wind. The tension was palpable. You saved her, the Supreme Commander said again. And now, you will decide whether to obey the law or defy it. The consequences are yours. He looked at Lysera. Her small hand trembled in his. I don't care about your laws, he said, voice low. I only care about her life. A murmur swept through the council. One officer stepped forward, voice sharp. Commander, there is unrest. Reports indicate that your sister has orchestrated the market attack and other attempts on the child's life to seize power. She is rallying forces within the Imperium. If we allow this human to interfere, she may succeed. The human's heart sank. So the attacks had been internal, a coup under the guise of assassination. Betrayal ran deeper than he had imagined. He had thought the threat came from outside, but it originated within the very empire that claimed ownership over the child he protected. Lysera's mother's eyes narrowed. She thinks she can take my place, she hissed, and she uses my own blood to challenge me. This human, he may be the key to stopping her. He blinked. Why do you mean me? Yes, she said calmly, though a fire burned in her gaze. Your tactics are unpredictable. You think in ways my soldiers cannot anticipate. The rigid strategies of the Talon military are designed for order, not improvisation. You may be the only advantage we have against my sister. The weight of her words pressed down on him. He wasn't a soldier of the Talon Imperium. He wasn't a general or even trained for a large-scale battle. He was a freighter captain, a smuggler by trade, accustomed to danger, improvisation, and survival. Yet here he was, being told that his instincts could save an empire. He turned to Lysera, her eyes wide, glowing faintly in the dim light. We have to stop her, she whispered. If she succeeds, if my sister succeeds, I don't know what will happen to everyone, to the empire, or to us. He nodded, determination hardening in his chest. Then we stop her. Together. The council chamber erupted into activity. Plans were drawn, squads were mobilized, and for the first time, he saw the chaos beneath the surface of the Talon Imperium's rigid perfection. Soldiers moved with precise efficiency, but their movements were predictable. Their attacks were methodical, and in that predictability lay opportunity. He studied the maps, memorizing every corridor, every squad rotation, every blind spot. The human mind thrived on improvisation, and he formulated a plan that would exploit the sister's confidence in her own order. He instructed small teams in tactics that defied tradition, using stealth, misdirection, and surprise to gain the upper hand. Lysera's mother watched him with fascination. You fight differently, she said quietly. Unorthodox, dangerous yet effective. He shrugged. I fight to survive, and right now, survival is the only way to save her. The first wave of engagement came sooner than expected. Reports flashed across the console. The sister had launched a strike team into the lower chambers, targeting key control nodes to cripple the flagship. He moved swiftly, guiding Talon loyalists with unorthodox maneuvers, splitting squads, using decoys, and exploiting blind angles. Bolts of plasma whizzed past him, ricocheting off walls, while alarms screamed through the corridors. Lysera clung to his side as they navigated the chaos. They're too strong, she cried, but he only shook his head. No one is too strong, he said. You just have to be unpredictable. Now, follow me. They moved through the corridors like shadows, striking in unexpected places, confusing the sister's forces. His strategies were raw, unrefined, and frighteningly effective. Talon soldiers who prided themselves on discipline faltered under human ingenuity. The sisters' coup began to falter in it because of superior force, but because no one could anticipate the moves of someone who didn't play by the rules. Yet victory was not assured. The sister had anticipated some deviations, and she had set traps, lethal, precise, and merciless. One corridor erupted into fire and energy blasts, and he barely managed to shield Lysera behind a bulkhead. Sparks rained down, igniting debris around them. He coughed, shielding her face. This is far from over, he muttered. Lysera's eyes glowed brighter, almost responding to his words. He realized, with a mix of awe and fear, that her energy wasn't just a defensive tool, it was alive, sensitive to both danger and intent. It pulsed with every movement, every beat of her heart, and when he had risked his own life to protect her, it had reacted instinctively, helping them survive. The sister herself appeared at the head of a squad, her presence radiating authority and malice. Her energy blade ignited with a hiss, designed to kill in one stroke. She stepped forward, confident in her trap. You cannot win, human, she said. You are only delaying the inevitable. My empire will fall into my hands, and a child will answer to me. He squared his shoulders. Maybe, he said, voice calm despite the adrenaline. But you'll have to go through me first. The corridors echoed with the clash of plasma and steel. Sparks flew, alarms blared, and each moment was a fight for survival. And yet, through every desperate maneuver, every narrow escape, he saw the spark in Lysera fear, yes, but also courage. She was learning, reacting, and contributing in ways no one had anticipated. The battle raged on, and with each move he realized one undeniable truth. This fight was bigger than survival. It was about trust, loyalty, and the bond forming between human and alien. And as he faced the sister in the final corridor, energy blade poised to strike, he knew that one wrong move would cost them everything. But he also knew somehow, against impossible odds, they had a chance. And that chance rested not on the rigidity of armies, but on the unpredictability of a human who refused to follow the rules. He met the sister's gaze, ready for whatever came next. The corridors were silent, the air thick with tension. One strike could end it all. One misstep could destroy the fragile alliance that had formed between him and the child. And in that silence, as both sides braced for the final confrontation, he realized this was far from over. The outcome of the battle and the fate of the Talon Imperium would hinge on the choices he made in the next heartbeat. The flagship trembled as explosions rippled through its hull. Alarms screamed, lights flickered, and the smell of scorched metal filled the corridors. He ran alongside Lysera, her small hand gripping his tightly. As debris rained from above, the sisters' forces had retreated into the lower decks, desperate but far from defeated, leaving chaos in their wake. Sparks shot from shattered consoles, and smoke curled into the air like serpents. Every step was a gamble. One wrong move could send them plummeting into the void or straight into the enemy's line of fire. Lysera's mother appeared at the end of the corridor, her imposing presence cutting through the panic. "We must stabilize the core," she said, voice calm despite the chaos. "If the ship collapses, we all die." He followed her lead, realizing with awe that Lysera's crystal, the one she had clutched since the attack, was resonating with the ship's energy. It pulsed, bright and steady, as if aware of the danger and responding. He had never seen anything like it. The child wasn't just a survivor, she was a living conduit of power, one that could save or destroy them all. The corridors narrowed as they moved toward the core chamber. Debris fell around them, sending sparks flying, and every footstep threatened to trigger another collapse. The sister had not given up. From the shadows, her soldiers fired with relentless precision, cutting through the air with bolts of energy designed to pierce even the thickest shielding. He shielded Lysera with his body, taking the brunt of the fire while he maneuvered them toward relative safety. "Stay low," he shouted, dragging her behind a fallen support beam. A blast struck the wall beside them, sending a shower of metal shards into the air. Lysera's small wings quivered, but she stayed close. "I'm scared," she admitted, voice trembling. "Good," he said, eyes narrowing. "Fear keeps you alive. Now focus on me, on staying alive, and on helping me get us out of this." Her violet eyes glimmered as she nodded, the crystal pulsing brighter in response. He realized then that her fear and determination were linked directly to the crystal's energy, as if it amplified her emotions into something tangible. The realization sent a shiver down his spine. If they could harness it correctly, it could turn the tide of the battle. They reached the core chamber, panels sparking, conduits torn open, and the central reactor groaning under stress. It was a scene of near-apocalyptic destruction. He could see her mother and loyal Talon officers working feverishly to stabilize the core, but it was obvious they wouldn't hold for long. "Place the crystal here," he instructed Lysera, pointing to a glowing interface on the reactor's control panel. Her small hands hesitated, then she complied. The crystal's energy surged into the ship, creating a shimmering field that stabilized the failing conduits. Sparks fizzled and smoke cleared slightly as the reactor hummed in resonance with the child's power. He exhaled sharply. "We've bought ourselves some time." But time was scarce. The sister emerged from the shadows, her energy blade ignited and cutting through the air with lethal precision. "You will not survive this," she shouted. "The child is mine." He stepped in front of Lysera instinctively, bracing for the strike. The blade sliced through the air, but he was faster than anticipated. Ducking and rolling, he deflected the attack with the edge of a loose metal panel. Sparks flew as the sister snarled, frustrated at the human's unpredictability. Lysera, sensing the danger, raised her hands instinctively. The crystal's energy surged outward in a dazzling wave, knocking the sister back and sending her soldiers sprawling across the chamber. "Lysera," he shouted, realizing the magnitude of what she had just done. Her eyes were wide, glowing brighter than ever. "She's learning," he muttered, awestruck, "and she's powerful beyond measure." The sister regained her footing, eyes blazing with fury. "You cannot win," she hissed. "You are nothing. Maybe to your rules," he said, voice steady, "but I make my own." Using the chaos, he guided the Talon loyalists in precise, unpredictable maneuvers. Soldiers who had been trained for strict formations faltered, unable to anticipate the human tactics. He exploited every flaw, every hesitation, every rigid instinct. Slowly but surely, they regained control of the chamber. The sisters' forces were pinned, struggling against a combination of alien power and human improvisation. The core chamber shuddered violently. The ship groaned, and alarms screamed louder than ever. One final blast of energy could collapse the entire structure, killing everyone. He glanced at Lysera, her hand steadying on the control interface, and realized that the ship itself was now linked to her power. If she focused, she could stabilize it, but the effort might overwhelm her. "I'll hold it with you," he said, placing his hands near hers, though not touching the crystal. "We do this together." She nodded, determination hardening her features. The crystal's energy surged, the reactor stabilizing as their combined focus guided it. Sparks flew and the ship trembled, but it held. The sister, realizing she was outmatched, made a desperate lunge, energy blade aimed at Lysera. Without hesitation, he threw himself between them. The blade struck his shoulder, sending a searing pain through him, but the human instinct took over. Using momentum and Lysara's energy pulse, he redirected the sister's strike into the chamber wall. The sister stumbled back, disarmed and shocked. Lysara's mother stepped forward, her eyes on him now filled with respect and awe. "You've done more than survive," she said quietly. "You've proven yourself beyond what I imagined. You are no mere human, you are our consort, our protector, and the bridge between our worlds." He looked at Lysara, then at her mother, and realized the magnitude of what had just happened. From a freighter captain who had risked everything for a single life, he had become a pivotal figure in an entire empire. The sister was restrained, her coup failed, and the remaining forces surrendered. The Talon Imperium began to stabilize under the Loyalists' command. Lysara clung to him, small hands on his chest. "You saved us," she whispered, eyes shining. "I only did what I had to," he said softly, "but we did it together." Her mother approached, placing a hand lightly on his shoulder. "Your courage has changed the course of history. From this day forward, you are recognized not only as my consort but as a guardian of the Imperium and protector of my daughter. The galaxy itself will know your name." He nodded, exhaustion heavy but satisfaction overwhelming. He had faced impossible odds, fought against betrayal and overwhelming force, and emerged not just alive, but respected, trusted, and bound to two lives he had sworn to protect. Lysara looked up at him, wings trembling slightly but slowly regaining strength. "We're together now," she said, voice full of awe and hope. He smiled, ruffling her hair gently. "Together," he agreed. Outside, the stars stretched infinitely, glittering over fleets and worlds. For a freighter captain who had only sought survival, he had found something greater, a purpose, a family, and a bond that transcended species and law. And as the Talon Imperium celebrated the loyalty restored and the coup averted, one truth remained clear. The human who had shielded an alien child from gunfire had become more than a hero. He had become a legend, one whose courage, cunning, and heart would shape the destiny of entire civilizations for generations to come. The galaxy was vast, and danger would always return, but together, human and alien child, consort and commander, they were ready to face whatever came next.